The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Everyone, welcome to another edition of Ion Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz along with Dan Rylance here, and we're very pleased to be joined on this episode, at least in the first half hour, by our retiring Oshkosh Chief of Police, Chief David Erickson. He is here, and then in the second half we'll be joined by the incoming new chief, Scott Greuel. So we're going to talk a little bit about law enforcement and what his plans are, what legacy he intends to leave behind, that kind of thing. So thanks very much for being here, Chief. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Wish you'd had an opportunity to be here before you retire. So, but anyway, you are retiring. We're taping this on the 19th. You're retiring 1 week and 1 day from today.
Correct.
And that's it. And you've been with us as our chief for how long?
I've been with the chief for 12 and a half years, and I've been with the Oshkosh Police Department for about 3 months short of 37 years.
Wow. Okay, and you just sort of moved up from the ranks. Tell us a little bit about what you did, when you first joined the department.
Well, when I first joined the department, I was in the patrol division, patrol officer on the night shift, and I spent my first 10 and a half years working the night shift. Early in the career, walking a beat. We used to have permanent beats back in the early 70s, and then as a squad driver. When I was promoted to sergeant, I stayed on nights for about 8 months, and then became the second training officer for the department. Up until 1981, we'd never had a designated training officer. And I did that job for around 6 years. And during that time, got to work in a wide variety of areas for training. Firearms, defense and arrest tactics, SWAT tactics, tactical tactics, that kind of stuff. And that was probably one of the most fun parts of my career. I really enjoy training. Then I was promoted to lieutenant, and they rewarded me with the night shift again, so I went back at night. And I was the shift commander for 2 years. And then there was 1 year where I had 5 jobs in 1 year. That was in 1989-90. And I was a night shift commander, a second shift commander, the commander of planning and research, where training is, a day shift commander, and then I got promoted to captain. And again, I was in charge of the patrol division, so the majority of my career has been patrol, or patrol directed. And I was a patrol commander for 5 years, and then when James Tomey retired in 1995, I was selected the next chief.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of changes have you seen, not just in law enforcement as a whole, but within the Oshkosh Police Department during your tenure there?
Well, there's a couple of major areas. The number one, I think, is training. Prior to, and I use the example, I told a story the other day. My first real day on the job, we had some orientation, sat around, read some rules and regulations, and then I was put out on the street with another new officer, very minimal equipment, for Christmas shopping in front of the old penny store to help people across the street and everything. And it was a short time after that, I was riding with another officer in a squad, and we were investigating a burglary, and I ended up catching the burglar. So my first arrest was a felony arrest, but I had no equipment, and I had no training. Now, today, if we hire an officer, if he's been to recruit school already, which is 520 hours, it'll be 3.5 months before he's on the road by himself. He'll spend 3.5 months with field training officers, 3 of those months, a month at a time on each shift, and then 2 weeks in what's referred to as a shadow period, where they're on their own, but the officer just watches them. If you're hired brand new and you don't have any training at all, and we got to send you to recruit school, it's almost 6.5 months before you're out on the street by
Wow.
yourself. So rather than being out there expecting to do things within a week, it's 6.5 months. So that is a major change in the way that goes. Technology is another one. About all you had was a portable radio and a squad radio back in those days. And for the most part, you work cooperatively with the other officers, but if you were on a beat especially, you were pretty much on your own. Now, we have problems with our squad cars being able to maintain the electrical system because we have so much equipment in the cars. Between cell phones and cars with dedicated radar units and mobile computers in the cars, and the new light bars. Matter of fact, we've been slowly going to LED light bars just because the power draw is so great the cars can't keep the batteries wear out. So the technology that we use, and also that we have the enhanced 911 that the dispatch center has, and they're working on triangulating cell phones, so we have enhanced 911s with cell phones. That technology change really makes us a lot more effective. You know, if you go back into the 60s and the 50s, when I came on, we were still using call boxes for information, you know, on the corners. So technology has really made a big change. The world in general, but law enforcement especially, because of the high-risk nature of it, is also driven by a society that sues a lot more than it used to, legal issues. And you know, it'd be nice if you can stay ahead of the game, and most of the time law enforcement tries, but every once in a while it's driven by lawsuits. And that encourages improvement and changes, and that wasn't like that back in the 70s, early 70s when I started. And another one is diversity. Law enforcement is far more diverse than it ever was. In the early 70s, there was almost no women in law enforcement. There were very few African Americans. We still don't have an African American on our department, although we're trying very hard. But we have 15% of our force is women, which is slightly ahead of the national average. And there was a period of time, we haven't been getting as many women candidates lately, and I don't know why that is. But there was a period of time about in the middle of my career as a chief where we were hiring women at a rate of about 40% of all of our new hires were female. And then most recently we were able to hire 2 Hmong officers, which was really something that we had been trying to do for years. We started out advertising up in the Twin Cities because of the large Hmong population, and the first time we did that, we ended up with 3 white Minnesotans. So, yeah, the language skills has something to do with the problems there, but diversity in law enforcement is so much greater than it ever was before.
Sure. And crime itself has changed over the years too, the types of things that you have to deal with as law enforcement personnel, and the inherent dangers, not just to yourselves, but to other citizens too.
Well, it's kind of a two-edged sword. As the dangers have gone up, the safety, the equipment, the level of training has gone up along with it. So right now, one of the biggest threats to officers are crashes, car accidents. And we had one officer that was hit by a drunk driver well over a year ago. That was he was off the road for almost 14 months because of that. We had an officer just a few weeks ago that got hit by a drunk driver, just driving down the street. Drunk driver T-boned him. Luckily, it was the driver hit him in the engine compartment. If it would have been the driver's compartment, that officer would have been severely injured. So one of the big threats right now is actually vehicle accidents.
We've been talking before about the closed process for the new chief of police and the manager of the airport and the senior citizen. When you were appointed chief 12 and a half, was there an open process at all, or was it strictly private as it was in this case?
I don't believe I think it was basically the same as this one, as I remember.
Okay.
The interviews were all done privately.
Okay. By the Police and Fire Commission?
Well, by the Police and Fire Commission and other groups. There's some parallels between this system and my system. One thing that wasn't involved in mine, that has been involved in both the fire chief and the new chief, is a peer community panel, where people from the community across the spectrum are involved in the interview process. A peer group panel, I had that in mind, made up of 3 chiefs from around the state, and the same with Captain Greuel. In his process, there was 2 police chiefs and the fire chief were involved in that. And then also the police and fire commission interviews. So they're basically the same. They haven't changed that much.
You mentioned 15% of your force now is female. Can you tell me where they are in the pecking order? You have 3 captains. Are any of the captains female?
No.
You have 5 lieutenants. Any females lieutenants?
One of them.
Okay. How about the 10 sergeants?
No.
Okay. Detectives?
2.
2. Okay, so in the higher order you have like 3, the rest of them I assume are just police officers.
Well, and then there's 3 that are PSLOs, police school liaison officers.
Oh, with the DARE program.
Well, they're in the schools. They're
In the
police
schools.
officers in the schools. The 2 female detectives were police school liaison before they came.
Okay. Question on the overtime. I think it's about $500,000. Is that roughly where we're
I
at?
think it's less than that, about 330 million, 330,000,
Okay.
360,000. You have the
Okay.
budget for this year there. I can look at it real quick.
I'm gonna have to say-
330,000.
Okay, can you tell us how that breaks down? What do you use that for?
Boy, everything. Overtime comes about for doing investigations.
Okay.
Let's say an officer has an investigation, they're at the end of their shift, it goes over into
They
the next
continue.
shift. They continue working it. If we can do it, if it's minor enough, we'll have them go home and come back and do the report that night. But if they're making an arrest or something, all that paperwork has to be done before they go. Serious crime, and that has clearly been up the last 2 years with the spat of murders and arson investigations and different problems that we have had, all involve investigators coming in. So if somebody is seriously injured in the middle of the night, we have investigators come in. That's overtime based. Staffing is also always an issue. One thing that we never had before was Medical Family Leave Act.
Okay,
When
the
you
family
have a
federal.
child, officers get off. Sometimes it results because the 2 officers are married to each other, both officers are gone. So we have staffing issues where we end up having overtime to fill those staffing boards, or if you're right at your bottom level where you want to be comfortably, and 1 or 2 officers end up being sick, then you end up having to hold somebody over or call somebody in.
So the overtime is pretty well spread out. It's not.
Yeah, in court is a good example. Every time an officer goes to court, almost always, unless it's a day shift officer, it's on overtime.
Okay, then you earned credit last year. I thought this was interesting. I like to read budgets. You got $49,083 from Country USA last year.
Correct.
Was that for police work during Country USA?
Correct.
But you don't have a penny from EAA.
No.
You don't charge EAA anything for the week?
Well, we don't do any work on their grounds.
You don't do any?
None.
Okay.
We do traffic direction,
Okay.
but we do traffic direction for all kinds of things, and we've always viewed that as a service to the general community rather than a service to EAA.
Okay.
It helps you as a private citizen get around the west side of town, and at the same time it helps, because if we didn't do it, when the people are coming in and the people are going out, the west side of town would be almost gridlocked. But we don't, the sheriff's department takes care of all activity on the grounds.
Okay.
So, and I believe they get reimbursed for some of their costs over there, but we don't do anything on the grounds.
And auxiliary police also are out there for EAA doing
Well,
some
our
traffic,
auxiliary,
aren't they?
no, not anymore.
Oh, they're not?
Well, they are, but they're no longer working for us. They're working for EAA
Okay,
during that event only.
okay.
And they're on the grounds, but
Okay.
I don't know, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we decided that we didn't want to, our auxiliary is voluntary, they don't get any money.
Right.
So if they're getting money, that jeopardizes the integrity of the program. So we said, okay, for EAA, work for EAA. And EAA was very agreeable to that.
Okay.
So they put on a yellow security shirt now, and work for EAA.
What about sawdust days? Just kind of, taking off on Dan's list there. Sawdust days, now in the past, they've not paid for the overtime because
Correct.
they're a nonprofit organization. This year, as I understand it, they hired their own security firm? Is that
Yes, they
correct?
hired a security firm out of Milwaukee that does security for events to help supplement ours. We were still out there. So it assisted us. We still had the overtime costs. Probably one of the two busiest nights of the year are New Year's Eve because of all the parties and stuff, and we take care of that pretty much on our own with not a lot of overtime, but some overtime, and 4th of July. And 4th of July is just bedlam with the fireworks complaints and the volume of people. And no matter what happened, we'd have people out there on overtime anyways on 4th of July.
So is it the same amount of overtime, Chief, pretty much? would
Yeah,
you
it
say?
stays pretty consistent over the years. Most of the time, most of our overtime costs for special events like Sawdust Days, Waterfest, Traffic for EAA have slowly been going down. As each year we do every special event that we work, we do an after-action report. And then that after-action report is reviewed when that event comes up again to look at changes we can make and improvements. So our overtime and time involved in these special events has slowly been going down across the
But
board.
not for
it's
Sawdust
still,
Days then?
Well, not for the 4th of July.
Okay.
For the days prior to and during, it's down a little bit, not much though.
See, I think that's so weird that they can't, I mean, they've got money to go and hire their own security firm, and yet we still have to have your officers and soon to be, Chief Greuel's officers out there, and it's costing the taxpayers money, and they, because of their nonprofit status, they won't reimburse us, we can't bill them, and yet they can hire their own people. That just, something about that just doesn't ring right with me, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the level of their finances are and how they're able to do that and what kind of a negative impact hiring that group may have had on them. I know that we have always looked at, just like the EAA traffic, security for some special events, especially ones like Waterfest and parades and things like that, is still part of our mandate to the public, what they expect. It assists those people, it also assists other people, so it's part of what we do.
Sure.
And so we have never really gotten involved in reimbursement. We didn't have much of a mechanism. We have a good mechanism with Country USA, Life Fest, those kind of events, because the county has a permit system that mandates security. And so we work within that permit system and mandate, and that's how we charge back for the Hmong Festival on Labor Day. We were reimbursed for probably, I don't know, almost half of our costs. We've never charged anybody for our straight time costs. And one of the thoughts behind that is we're going to be there anyways. If you have a major event, whether we're on the grounds or not, we're going to end up there because there's always going to be some problems.
You mentioned a permit system. How does what the county does differ then from what the city does?
Well, we've never had a permit system. We were working on a special events project over the last year, and the officer that was doing that left the department, went to another department. So it kind of got stopped. It isn't dead or anything, but in his project, the conclusion he came to in looking at other departments, other in the state, that the best way to approach reimbursement and special events, let's get away from reimbursement first. The best way to approach special events is from a permit process. That gives you timelines, and it gives you information that a lot of times we don't get. Sometimes we find out about a special event the week before it's going to happen.
Sure.
Sometimes days before it's going to happen, rather than a month before or 60 days, something like that. So the permit gives us advance warning. It helps us to do our scheduling. It helps us reduce our costs, because if we can block out certain times, we won't let as many officers off. We have more officers working. We can work it a little bit better. We still end up with some overtime on most big events. Then the permit system could also have a security review in it, which includes how many people do we need, what's our capabilities of supplying them for nothing, and what would our overtime costs be, and then you can predict that, and you can charge it back. I like what some department, there's a couple of departments, I think Racine is one of them. Their plan is they'll take care of the first year for free. You have a new event, they'll police it as they think they could, and they won't charge them a penny. But afterwards, they review what happened, and then they'll sit down with the people and say, this is what our costs were, and if you're going to do it again next year, this is what it's probably going to cost you.
Sounds like a good idea.
I have 2 viewer questions. First viewer question is, how much money do you make on the 2 to 5 a.m. Parking prohibition in town? What's your revenue on
I
that?
don't know.
They say it's a cash cow, and I ought to ask the chief how much it is.
I really don't know.
You really don't know?
Finance department, collections takes care of all that. We don't see any of it.
Is it a little bit more, a little bit more?
I really don't know.
Oh,
I've never checked it.
Okay.
I wish I would have known ahead of time.
All right. Second question. This comes from my friend Ed Holliday over on Adams Avenue. What speed do you pick up drivers on either 20th or 9th Avenue?
Well, let's see, 20th Avenue is 35 in the city, I think 30 out in the county.
Okay. No one gets picked up going. Those are your 2 big speed, right, in the city?
Right, no, we do a lot of traffic in those
really?
areas, yeah. There is no set thing. It really, you have to think of police officers as kind of like independent contractors. They work for the city, they contract with the city, and they go out there. And rightfully so,
okay.
Because I don't think of any community would stand for, what you have is a quota system if you don't have that. That's where I mandate where we're going to arrest. Okay. So the officers cannot take any other considerations in. So basically the way speeding and all traffic is enforced is based upon officer perception, risks that's involved, amount of traffic, the location, all of these different things, and there is no set way. Every officer has a little bit different way of enforcing traffic. Some officers, which I really I'm not that happy about, give a lot of warnings out.
Okay.
Other officers give a lot of citations out. And it's a mixed bag, so there is no set way to do it. And the only way you could create that is to establish this is what our tolerance is going to be. If you get 5 miles over the limit, you're going to get a ticket, or you're going to get stopped. You get 10 miles over the limit, you're going to get a ticket, so forth and so on. But it doesn't allow for other factors, and it takes away that discretion that all police officers have. And some people become very frustrated by discretion.
I understand.
Because if you're hot on a subject, you want enforcement, you want rigid enforcement, and discretion doesn't provide that. But on the same token, in other areas, you don't want rigid enforcement. You want people to think about what's going on and base their decisions upon their training and their experience and what they see in the community. And I think you're always better off with the discretion than without it. And almost no one likes it when you have speed traps, nobody likes quotas. I mean, gee whiz, we have a few people that would love them because we'd be arresting everybody left and right. But the vast majority of people would hate it.
Okay.
So you have to have that discretionary capabilities in your officers.
I have one future question. You talked about technology sort of at the beginning. If the City Council, Common Council next week passed an ordinance that prohibited handheld cell phones in Oshkosh, and they called you to the meeting to see how you could enforce or not enforce it, what would be your response?
Well, we could enforce that.
Really?
I think it's an easy one to enforce because you see it every day. Every time you drive down the street, you see people.
But how much would you commit to doing that, and where would it be on your priorities?
Well, it would be just like any traffic violation.
Okay.
I mean, it's the type of violation that is very, what's the word for it? It's not predictable. it's chance and find. I mean, you could drive you could drive for a day and never see anybody on a cell phone. The next day you could drive and see 6 people on a cell phone. So it's kind of hit and miss. What it would do, it would become part of our normal patrol strategy.
Okay.
You would tell the officers cell phones, new ordinance, cell phones you can't talk on them. It's a ordinance arrest. And if you see anybody, you want to stop them. For the first part, it would be warning for sure, but they'd have the option of making arrests depending upon the circumstances involved. And then how much is enforced would be dictated by officer activity, how much free time they have to enforce it. If you're on your way to a call and you see people on a cell phone, and you see people speeding, most of the time you're not going to be able to do anything. And a lot of times nobody can tell when an officer's on the call, because most of our calls dictate normal response. Even alarms, unconfirmed silent alarms, the officers are expected to respond like normal traffic rather than going hell-bent through the community and risking people's lives for what are usually false alarms. So that would be how it would be enforced.
Do you think it's a safety problem, Intel?
It's a concern to me. I worry about people on cell phone because I don't think you're really paying attention.
I don't either.
And I've been on a cell phone in the car. I've gotten a call, or I'm driving down the street, and all of a sudden I think of something really important, then I on my cell phone. And if you think about it, if you've ever done it, while you're talking, you can go 2 blocks and you don't remember anything which was in those 2 blocks.
Half the time people don't, though, necessarily anyway.
Well, that's true.
Good point.
Short-term memory being what it is.
Some people, I think, can multitask, and others,
Yeah,
they have a difficult time single-tasking.
Correct.
We've got just a couple minutes left, Chief. How do you want to most be remembered for your work here?
Well, I think I've established an organization that's ready to move on, that's been moving on while I've been here. Captain Greuel will talk about his vision for community policing in the future. The groundwork has been set for that, and it's been Chief Tomey started it. I continued it. So I think we have the groundwork, we have the work ethic, we have the work group, the officers that we have are ready to make that transition to the next step on that. So I think I've done that. I think I've provided a good work atmosphere from a labor management standpoint. Right now, for the last 5 years, we've been enjoying the best labor management relationship that we ever have in my entire career. I did a couple of things that I think were important. One was got the sergeants out of the union. It created a lot of internal, not so much turmoil, but contradiction and worry, because you had supervisors that were expected to discipline people that were represented by the same union people.
Understand.
Yep.
So we were able to get them out of the union. And that was good. It established that separation, which is what it's supposed to be. The other thing, the captains are now out of any union. They're non-rep like I am, which is what they were. They always were command officers. They worked under separate labor rules. They just didn't have the status that was important. I think I provided an atmosphere for movement within the organization that resulted in being able to promote one of our own, which is very important. That the fact that Captain Greuel is going to be our next chief is just momentous for our organization, because it allows for movement in the organization, and it says that our organization is doing things right.
Okay.
We don't have to have somebody from the outside come in and tell us how to do it. We're doing it right. And accreditation helps with that, and all the other things that we've been doing.
Sure.
And my goal has always been is just to allow my staff people and even our officers to do their best, to provide challenges for them, and then step back and let them do it. I'm there for resource to, if they need help or whatever, but not to do it for them, and I'll let them make some mistakes and let them do their job, because that's the way they learn. And I think we have a very, very talented group of supervisors for sure.
All
and
right.
our officers. Our officers are, our officers are different than they used to be way back when,
Okay.
because they're
Well,
career police, and
all right.
they're just great.
Good. Well, we're going to get one of those talented officers in here right now. Thank you much for being here.
Oh,
and,
you're
and
welcome.
best of luck to you in your years of retirement.
Good luck
Thank
for
you
your
for-
service and good luck for your
Thank you
retirement.
for all your
Thank you very
years
much.
on the force. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will be joined by Captain Scott Greuel, our new incoming police chief. We'll be right back.
Hey, enjoy
All
it.
right.
I wish
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
I just
I couldn't practice my religion.
I was put to work in forced labor camps.
If I stay in California, I would have been dead by now.
If you think differently, then you're an enemy.
If you know how to read and write, you're dead. You speak your mind, you're dead.
The only way to express what I wanted to do was to get out.
I got to the country when I was about 14 years old.
I was 20.
I was 24.
I came here with nothing. No money, no English.
America stood for freedom, it stands for freedom, and that's what all my generation, young generation, wanted to be there.
For the first time, I felt like I have a right to be on this earth.
Here, you can do whatever you want to do.
I love my life here. I feel at home.
I'm free to do what I want.
Freedom to me means my life.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Poor nutrition today will increase Sarah's chances of anemia, add to her healthcare costs, sick days, even stunt her ability to learn. And the thing is, Sarah's not even born yet. Get proper nutrition before it's too late. Call or visit WIC. WIC provides nutrition information, healthcare referrals, even food. Your child has you, and you have WIC.
Second half of Ian Oshkosh, Cheryl Hentz, still here along with Dan Rylance, and
here as well.
the changing of the guard has occurred, and Chief Erickson has left the room, left the building. No, he's still here, but we are now very pleased to be joined by Captain Scott Greuel, who is our new incoming police chief as of 1 week and 1 day from today, correct?
That's correct.
Do you actually take over on the 27th, which is his last day, or?
Yeah, he'll go on his way on the 27th, and I'll be sworn in the afternoon and take over duties from there.
So he gets to leave early for the day,
He
huh?
might get to leave early if he wants to.
Well, congratulations, first of all, on the appointment. We appreciate your being here as well. And you and I have worked a little bit on the Citizens Academy, and so we go back a year or two, I guess. So I was personally very pleased to see your appointment. I didn't know any of the other candidates, but I knew that you had a lot of good skills and qualifications that you'd be bringing to the table. So, you've got some big shoes to fill, though. Literally and figuratively. What are some of the changes that you'd like to implement? I know community policing is one of them.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much. I appreciate those kind words. It's an honor to be selected and taking over as the next police chief, and it's a privilege for me to be on your show. So hopefully, from time to time, I'll be invited back.
We'd love to have you back, sure.
But those are absolutely big shoes to fill. Chief Erickson has had a very long and distinguished career with the Oshkosh Police Department, and has brought great leadership to the department and the community. And I hope in the end, in my legacy, I'll be able to have someone say that about me as well. He's been a good mentor to me over the years. But what I intend to do and hope to do is build on some of the things that are in place, that are working fine, and implement some new strategies potentially that is something that our community is asking for. One of the strategies I'd like to build on is the idea of community policing. It's not a new concept by any means, but it's one that develops partnerships with the community and the police, and together we resolve problems. We've had some successes with that in the past. We've done some efforts where we've assigned individual officers to certain problems within the community with a great deal of success. Logan Drive a few years ago was identified as a problem, and we dedicated some officers to it and reduced calls for service over a period of time by almost 70%, which is huge. Where we haven't quite taken it as far probably as we can go is what we did was we dedicated a group of officers to it. And what I want to bring to this effort is a department-wide philosophy and integrate this with the other segments of the organization and make it a method of operation for our entire organization. More recently, we've had an ongoing effort in the Near East neighborhood, which is a segment of the community on the east side of town. It's about a 10 or a 20 block area bordered by streets that have been identified as kind of a blighted area. There's quality of life issues. There's homes in need of repair, a lot of multifamily.
You're talking
type
about
dwellings.
my neighborhood or close to it. I'm at 602 East Parkway.
Okay.
So I know it. I know that neighborhood really well.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
And it's an area that's been identified as, maybe a disproportionate amount of tax revenue coming in and money expended for calls for service. So it was identified at a city level that this is an area that we need to spend some attention developing some strategies for, and one of those strategies was to involve the police. And so we've been working in a collaborative effort with other city departments to do some efforts, neighborhood walk and talks. We've increased our neighborhood watch groups in that area by at least 4 in the last year, and we've got an ongoing relationship, and we're dealing with the quality of life issues there. And so I want to take those successes that we've had and build it on a larger scale. And so we're talking a lot recently about, with our people, about what are the strategies that we're going to use to implement this and be more open and more transparent to the community and develop and build the partnerships that already exist and develop new ones. And what we've come up with is we already have the city. It's broken down. And when we started planning this, we thought, okay, well, are we just going to be data driven and look at areas where problems are based on data, and try and redesign this effort department wide? It became a pretty cumbersome task. And so we said, hey, well, let's look at this a little bit. We've already got the city divided into 7 patrol areas. Officers are already very comfortable with those areas. Each area has their own unique problems. And let's just use that as a base to start. And so we're going to maintain 7 geographical areas in the city. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assign officers, regardless of shift, on a permanent basis to those 7 areas. And so what it develops is officer ownership. It puts a name and a face to our community and our stakeholders in those areas to say, that's my officer. If I've got a problem, I can deal directly with this team of officers that will be assigned that area long term. And so you'll develop relationships, and there'll be expectations that will occur during that period of time. And what we're initially talking about is forming up teams. So there'll be, each shift is divided into 3 off groups. And so each off group has 5 to 7 officers. And so they will select the area that they want to work in, but it will be independent of each off group. So they can't have the same people in each off group working in that area. And so what you do is you develop a team of officers. So there'll be teams of officers on first shift, 1 through 7, teams of officers on second shift, 1 through 7, teams of officers on third shift, 1 through 7. And each team will have unique problems that they'll have to work on. And it'll be regardless of shifts. So 24 hours a day, each area will have the same team for at least a year working on it. And then I truly believe that we only know what's occurring in our community by what's reported to us. You were in the Citizens Academy class, and I was amazed to listen to the class attendees talk about the issues in their neighborhood. And I truly believe we don't know half of what's going on in our community unless it's reported to us. And so we'll insert teams of officers into these neighborhoods now to talk with residents, to meet and greet them, to get out of the sterile environment of the squad car, to pull up on a bicycle, to pull up on foot, to talk to neighbors on their porches and identify the issues that are going on in their community, and then empower the officers to take ownership in that problem, and then work with the neighbors, to problem solve, develop action plans, and problem solve resolutions to those problems. Most of the issues that occur as a root cause are quality of life issues that can very simply be resolved by teams of officers working on it. And it would be nice to get to a day where in roll call, an assignment comes out that we've got speeding problems on Parkway Avenue, and the officer says, that's my problem. I'll go talk to the neighbors, find out what's going on there, and we'll develop strategies to resolve that issue.
I really encourage, I share something with you. I belong to the Community Watch thing. We've lived there since '98, and we would meet over at the Boys and Girls Club once in a while. The big criticism I had for doing it was follow-up, that you just didn't have the resources. For example, speeding on Parkway. We'd say, can you please monitor that? Well, yeah, but it's low priority, and it was never checked. We have a petty thief in our neighborhood. The suggestion was for us to get a video camera and catch him. Well, he's never around. I can't devote 24 hours. If I knew when he was coming, he wouldn't steal anything. So there was a frustration, a good idea on paper, but I think as an overall view, you guys were hard pressed. It was not a high enough. So I hope when you do it, it goes up on priority, because that was my observation of doing that.
Yeah, and I totally am sensitive and sympathetic to what you're saying, and there's a lot of truth to that. And I think part of it is we're never going to get away from the emergency demands and the busy times of year where officers are running from call to call to call to call. However, when we look at these things in the long term, and I want to get back to that thought a little bit, but as we develop ownership into your problem, it becomes a higher priority. And initially, in the theory of community policing, initially as you start developing that partnership with your neighbors, the demand of officers goes up, because I've got officers now that I can work with directly. I'm going to utilize them, and we start to learn about issues that we didn't know before. And so initially that's what happens. The goal of community policing is for the calls for service requests to go down, because you're in a proactive mode, not a reactive mode.
Exactly.
And you're preventing things from happening. And so by identifying some of those critical elements that are root causes, your need goes down, and so you can spend more time in proactive activity. Your uncommitted time goes up, and it allows the officers, the time to do that. And so, I totally understand what you're saying. But the goal is for these officers to say, that's my problem, I'm going to take ownership, I'm empowered to resolve it.
And I think some of the neighborhood I live in, I think is ripe for that relationship with your officers. I really do. I get widows and older people call me, and they say, Dan, you know what happened the other night? And I said, no, well, I'm concerned. You check it out for me. I call every once in a while. Your people are always there really quickly. I mean, that's a compliment, truly. I mean, and I, but there are some older people, developmentally disabled people, that they call me. And so, boy, I want to work with your officer. I want to know his name. And I want him to know my name and my telephone and my address, because there's a need for that in the neighborhood that I live.
Yeah, and we certainly don't want to alienate anybody.
Right.
And oftentimes we don't know the services that are being missed because, unless someone calls us and we respond.
They're hesitant to call. They call me and say, oh, what do you think? And I was asleep.
And of course, the goal is to develop that relationship, to have liaisons with existing neighborhood watch groups, expand that, and have a one-on-one relationship with block captains. The information sharing increases. a success that's come out of Near East and out of the development of more neighborhood watch groups is now on our website at www.oshkoshpd.com, you can go on to a section called the Police Blotter, and any individual that has access to the internet can review the complaints from the previous 24 hours. Now, sometimes there's a delay or two of a day, but a day or two on there. But that was expressed to us by some landlords and some residents in neighborhoods that says, you know, this is fine, you know, but we want to know what's going on. You're not here every day. We want to know what's going on in our neighborhood. And so that was developed as a strategy that came out of an interaction that we may not have had because of this proactivity. And so long term, I really believe that because of our ownership into an area, a piece of the pie that officers are going to take ownership into, we may be able to prevent more serious offenses from happening by getting at the root causes of these quality of life
I think it's
issues.
a wonderful idea, and I wish you the best.
Yeah. One of the things that Dan had mentioned with Chief Erickson was the overnight parking issue. Obviously, we couldn't get an answer to that, and that's fine. You know, a lot of communities, though, allow parking overnight. They relax their overnight parking during the I want to say probably late spring to fall issue. There's like a 6 or 7 month span there where they do allow parking overnight on any street, and you don't have to call in. And that's something that's been discussed here, but it's always kind of met with resistance by, you know, whether it's the police department or a member of the city council or what have you. Do you have a personal feeling on that, and what would your thoughts be?
Yeah, I've been a night shifter for a long time, and enforcement of 2 to 5 parking, both as an officer and supervisor and command a person, has been an issue we've dealt with at times, and I understand what people are saying. You know, the basis in my belief of why we have 2 to 5 and why it hasn't gone from a half year to a 3/4 year ordinance is exactly what we've been talking about, quality of life issues. And if you allow cars to park on the street, regardless of any rule or order to move, pretty soon you're going to have cars stacked up all over the place. You know, other city services come along, they want to clean the streets. You know, we don't want obstructions for emergency vehicles to get through. And so if you don't enforce some rule that gets these people to move the vehicles, you're going to have quality of life issues. You're going to have the broken windows theory, where pretty soon neighborhoods look degraded because you have, you know, vehicles that are inoperable, unlicensed, you know, in mechanical disarray, are incapable of being moved. They become almost magnets for, you know, for intoxicated motorists or, you know, people to crash into. And I think it is a quality of life issue. And you know, absolutely, there's revenue generated from that, and you know, officers will, at certain times of year and certain days, it'll be more of a focus for enforcement than other days. And so we've heard all those arguments, and you know, there are a lot of valid arguments to that. But I guess when it comes down to the bottom line is that when you look at most streets at night, they look clean, they look pristine. You know, there isn't a lot of immovable objects that are obstructions, and I think it just ties into this whole philosophy of quality of life.
I thought we were going to get a different answer.
And yet there are streets in town where permits are sold for overnight.
I lived in 4 communities in 4 different states, same size population, where they have Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday on one side of the street, and Monday. And these are towns where they need snow removal because, like, 2 of them are in North Dakota.
Okay.
And I fought this with the chief, and I know he's non-flexible. The other thing is the quality of life about not having cars on the street with that. We had a pool in our neighborhood. There was a van parked in the 400 block of Monroe, right across the street from the playground by St. Mary's Church. This van had 20 stickers on it to be removed. It had a flat tire on the left, and it was there for 6 weeks, and no one moved it. So I'm saying, that argument about no parking from 2 to 5, that's kind of bogus. That van's been there a long, long time.
Yeah, and obviously when you see those things, we'd appreciate a call.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if we have a better grasp of what's going on,
No,
it's all
I'm
coming
just,
down to
yeah. But
and obviously sometimes, with the amount of activity that's going on, we may not
Right.
get to those
Right.
things. And
I
our
understand.
paper trail of knowing where those cars are might not catch up with us.
I had a bet with one of the common council members as to when it was going to go off, and it was there a long time.
Budget problems are certainly a big challenge that you're going to be facing. And the city's budget process is going to start sooner than I
You're
think
gonna-
any of us
yeah,
really
you're
want
gonna next-
to think
not gonna
about.
be easy years.
What can we in the council and citizens at large, what can we expect to see from a budgetary standpoint for the police department?
Well, I think it's going to be a lean, mean fighting machine again. Actually, we have started our budget team and I think part of it is my training. We have I've been involved in the budget process from a subunit standpoint in the past, and not the ultimate decision maker, which will be this time around from an organizational standpoint. So it's a little bit of a indoctrination by fire a little bit, because the chief has been a great mentor as far as that's concerned, and we've started to develop our budget team and take a look at that already. But I don't think that it looks real optimistic at this point as far as being able to fund any real significant change in the budget. The initial mandate of not much of an increase in things is going to be difficult for funding some of the things we would like to see, that we may have to, from a technological standpoint, look at grants and some other things to get the things that we need to accomplish our mission of information sharing and making us more efficient. I understand that there's some work on the state level yet with the budget that might help increase some of the spending that we'll have to take a look at and maybe make some changes to. But right now we're not looking at a lot of real significant increases. We're trying to staff as we feel we need to provide the greatest level of service to the community and promote public safety, and at the same time be prudent and efficient. And so that definitely will be challenge number one for me as we...
Can I make a suggestion on one reduction? We're going to have Sheriff Michael Brooks from the county in here a week or two, right?
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Every time he runs for re-election, he says he's going to meet with the Oshkosh City Police to maybe consolidate the SWAT teams.
Yeah.
We have 4 SWAT teams, correct me if I'm wrong, in the county: Neenah, Menasha, City of Oshkosh, and Winnebago. Do we need 4 SWAT teams for the county?
Well, and that's something we do need to talk about, where there can be some collaborations or consolidations in some efforts. For some time now, we've had a very close working relationship with the county SWAT team. We mutually train, we share equipment, and in most instances right now when we're called out, the county team assists us. And so there's a couple of schools of thought with that. Obviously, if you consolidate some teams, you're reducing the impact it has on any one organization as far as manpower, training, equipment. Sure. Those resources can be shared, and that makes sense. The danger to going completely to one consolidated team in a large area, as Winnebago County is, if you have 2 major crises going on, you're pooling from one source. We've done some joint things with tactical teams, the civil disturbance tactical teams and special events and things like that, where we work closely together. There may be other issues that we can talk about to consolidate, such as investigative task forces. We already do have joint drug task forces, but major case investigations may be something that we look at. Consolidation of resources as it relates to crash teams and investigation of major crashes and fatalities is something that we continue to look at. And so from that standpoint, from a budgetary standpoint, certainly some of those things seem to make sense. there are pros and cons of all
course,
of that.
sure.
Even from a supply purchasing standpoint, now I know there's all sorts of rules with bidding and all those kind of things, but we all use paper. We all use ink,
Sure.
and so maybe a consortium of buying for certain things might be a good thing. That,
Buy in volume, the
buy in
price is
volume,
what-
price
Sure.
goes down.
Sure. Has Homeland Security given you any money?
Well, we
Or
yes.
have you applied for any money?
Yes, in fact, that's one of those things that can supplement a budgetary process. We have been the recipient of huge grants. We just received and I'm not exactly sure of the cost equivalent, but portable surveillance equipment that is about $200,000 to $250,000 worth of equipment that we used out at Sawdust Days that enables us to set up some video cameras and monitor that from another location that helps give us some eyes and monitor crowds and look for disturbances and things like that. And so we've benefited from grants in the past that last year we purchased or we received by a grant through Homeland Security a video enhancing equipment that will allow us to take like surveillance footage from a bank or from an all-night gas station where they have their own surveillance cameras that where maybe a robbery occurred, and we can take some of that footage, enhance it, and maybe give out to the media a pretty pristine picture of a suspect or something. Okay. And so we have taken advantage of a lot. Now, we're fortunate in that our organization has a civilian grant writer.
Okay.
And many departments do not. And so we have been able to acquire a lot of equipment through the grants. Now, a lot of that federal money filters to the state, who then disperse it through the emergency management directors of the county. And a lot of that in the past has gone for interoperability to support incident command systems in portable radios that we've received some of those. But some of that money is drying up, and it's going to areas that have, ports, that have international airports, and
higher
that
risk.
are higher risk
Sure.
that have been, identified as more solid risk areas, and in Oshkosh, Wisconsin is maybe a little lower on the threat level. But we have been very successful in getting some of that. We're going to continue to explore that because obviously our needs are not going to be fulfilled entirely by the budgets. We have a real need to under an FCC mandate to improve our radio communications to go, and we're working with the county to develop and improve the radio infrastructure. And so with that, in order to improve officer safety and be able to communicate in all areas of the city, in an ever-growing urban area where we are in and out of huge buildings, sometimes our radio communications is pretty inadequate.
All right.
And so we'll have to improve that.
Excellent. I'm sorry, we have to cut it short.
Yeah.
That
Alrighty.
was fast, didn't it?
It did.
It always does.
It did.
But we will definitely have you back.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have maybe back with an officer in one of these 7
Sure,
community areas
sure.
so we can see how this program
can
is
do that.
working.
That would be an
Huh?
excellent idea.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to you as you take
Yes.
over next week, and
appreciate
thank you
that.
very much for being here, and thanks to the chief again as well. And as always, thanks to Dan and the crew and you at home. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. We'll see you, and you keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.
Yeah, good luck.
Appreciate that.